Again, everybody. Good to see you. Nice to see you again, Chris, and welcome to our
Likewise.
podcast. I'm today. My guest is Chris Jennings, the CEO of Chris Jennings Group. I've known Chris for, I don't know, a couple decades, probably more than that, maybe.
At
So,
least.
yeah, so I'm covering a topic today here that I almost never cover for our podcast and blog, which is sales. And sales is such an interesting concept in the world of healthcare. And as our readers and subscribers and listeners know, probably that we work with all kinds of different healthcare entities. We do a lot with providers like multi-location providers, device, pharma, SaaS, a whole health plans, a whole wide variety of different businesses. Some of those businesses have a B2B component, really primarily. They're going out selling to doctors, they're selling to hospitals. Others are high-end B2C. So, for example, plastic surgery or addiction, infertility, bariatric surgery. So this, I can't cover everything we know about sales today in the next 25, 30 minutes with Chris. But I thought today, Chris has been somebody I've known forever, and we often share war stories. And today I thought it would be really fun to talk to Chris about is the sales leadership, sales management of, how do you get your sales better? And I think that's a pretty common issue. And there's so many concerns and confusions about the word sales in healthcare. I mean, the very word, sends shudders down a lot of people's backs. So anyway, Chris, welcome. And I guess why don't you do me a favor and just spend a 30-second message on what it is you guys do? That would be
Yeah,
helpful context.
sure. Sure. Thanks, Stuart, and appreciate you having me. And so we work with sales organizations and leadership teams to help improve sales process in an organization, whether that comes down to the individual producers or salespeople themselves, or whoever it is really that interacts with the customer, because sales, healthcare, and most industries, frankly, doesn't occur just between a salesperson and a buyer. It occurs between every interaction that you're having with your customer. So there's a thoughtfulness that we try to bring to every organization about how do they engage with customers, all the way from finding enough of them to have conversations with, to the securing beyond a level of interest, booking more appointments if need be, and then conversion ratios and holding on to margins. And we coach through a variety of coaching, consulting, training and development projects, and ultimately try to help every organization build a sales playbook that they operate off of. And
Yeah.
that's generally what we're doing.
So I think that's really the important thing. When I first met Chris, was years ago, earlier in my career, and I like to think I was already pretty good at. I've never looked at myself as just a 100% salesperson, but there's a component of sales in pretty much every job. And when I met Chris, I think I was already a pretty good salesperson, but after I did some of the techniques I learned from Chris, it got a little scary. It was so powerful. It was like it just got fun. I would change things just to change it to make it more difficult to see if I could still sell it, and I would. And so I always thought, like I know a lot of our audience probably aren't big on sales, but to me, sales is communication, right? And being able to
Right.
communicate effectively. And so much of what I learned from Chris in the earlier years was just really effective communication. So, Chris, you do a ton of Visage talks, and I know you talk about this issue a lot. So, I want to put you on a spot, like as we sort of plan through our podcast today. Like, what's kind of some of the most important things when it comes to sales leadership, or like, let's say whether you're in the device business and your salespeople aren't selling anything, or you're in a practice and you're not converting patients, or you're, like whatever the situation may be, what are some of the things that really matter as you start thinking about leadership? Like, what are some of the key levers that you can pull and you should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean the main thing from a sales leadership perspective is how are you developing your team? Let's assume that not every player on your team is Michael Jordan. That would be naturally a gifted player, and even a Michael Jordan is going to work harder at being a great player. So, what is your team development strategy? How often do you work with your team? Are you coaching your team? Do you have a playbook? What's your protocol for field rides and monitoring the amount of go live activity, which is how much time your people actually spend talking to customers and prospects, which is an underlying cause of most sales inefficiency is there's just not enough conversations being had between customers and prospects, or excuse me, between prospects and your whoever's representing you. So, do you have that structure in place to help people build a pipeline and have an ample opportunity to achieve their goals? And unfortunately, for most sales leaders, I'd say most sales leaders I met were good salespeople, but being a great salesperson certainly doesn't make you a great sales leader. And you got to shift gears and actually care more about the success of your team than you do about your own personal success. Most great salespeople care more about their own personal success, so they become very focused. Most great sales leaders are more interested in helping their team achieve their goals more so than they are them achieving their own goals, and therefore they have great development programs and ways to take a B player and turn them into an A player. And I think everybody's goal should be, hey, let's pick up one letter grade with whoever's on my team. If I have C players, let's turn them into Bs. If I got Bs, let's make them As. If I have As, let's make A pluses. Usually people don't grow by more than a letter grade, usually. But unless you're extraordinarily motivated and you did bring some basic skills with you. So
That's really intriguing. So you just brought up something that, I've thought about a lot lately, and it's this mythology of the great salesperson. And like, if I could only hire the right salesperson, then I'd be happy.
sure. Yeah, exactly.
And like, so you spend, 20 years trying to find that one sales guy or sales gal, and like 20 years just went by. Like that wasn't very effective. So, and like our mutual friend, unfortunately departed, Stephen, used to talk about, like the difficulty of being a good manager, like, Michael Jordan, going back to that idea. And Michael, like, says, okay, you stand at half court, you take the ball like this, you go like this, and then it goes in the net. And then when the sales rep can't do that, you just get flummoxed. Like, what? I just told you. What's so hard about this? So
For sure.
that mythology is a big challenge for sure. So as you think about that, so I think that's the first takeaway is like stop thinking about stars, start thinking about building a
Yeah.
team. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, so, since you brought up Steven, Steven was an A player with his own skills, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say probably where he would struggle the most is to bring in people and then develop them, which most sales leaders do. And usually what I find, my experience is, look, of course you want to continue to recruit the best people out there, but let's just go on the assumption that most of your players are going to be B players. They're not A plus superstars. Not everybody is Michael Jordan, right?
Right.
And but you're a good, solid NBA player. The question is, can I take you from that good, solid NBA player to somebody that helps us win a championship? And do I have a system like, if we go back to Phil Jackson, since we're talking to Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson ran the triangle offense, and he had a playbook that he operated out of, and everybody fit into that triangle offense, and he would try to develop those skills to be able to better increase not only the individual skill sets but the improvement of the team. And you have to be thinking about it in those terms. Like, what is your triangle offense? Have you developed that? And do you have a way of helping people get better with the skill sets necessary inside of that offense? And great leaders are very involved in employee and team development, right? And I find that across organizations.
So I brought Chris's team in to work with our team recently to, again, make sure we have a championship at everything we do, right? Everything we want to have the best marketing, the best operations, the best, branding, sales is nothing else. It should be, and like, again, if you have the star theory, it's just sort of up to them to figure it out. And like, one of the things that Chris's associate Anthony told me and reminded me, which I thought was brilliant, is like how many great organizations known for good selling let everybody do whatever they want to do. Yeah, that's the way, isn't that the way a lot of sales managers do it? Just everybody kind of does their own thing and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's not a lot of good development for sales. One of my personal goals is to get our material from the couple of books that we have out and the online programs that we're building into the university system because very few people majored in sales in college. I
Right.
don't know very many people that have a master's degree in sales leadership. And so unless you worked for a very large, very sales focused organization that developed those skills for you, and you work in small to medium sized businesses, those sales managers are hoping that their team does better, but it's a lot of hope and they're not really focused on developing, which, good for us. We have a business because sales leaders and other leaders offload some of that development to us because we do it all the time. And the average leader is only developing salespeople, in small minute bits. So we're probably going to have a better uh, chance of doing that. But the main thing is for leadership, you got to think development. Whoever comes to me that works on my team, how do I make them better? And if you're thoughtful about that and you focus your energies on that, that's how that's what I've seen. The organizations that have doubled and doubled again and had all the great success, they're very focused on team development.
So one of the things that philosophically we talk about a lot together, socially as well as professionally, Chris, is the idea that, everybody wants to measure sales outcomes, which of course you do to measure how well your salesperson is doing. But one of the things you guys focus in on is the activity. Can you describe that a little bit and why that
Yeah.
matters? Because you could argue like, well, I don't care what they do as long as they bring in deals. Like,
Yeah. Well, so great question. I love it. There's a younger sales guy that I know personally that, got permission through one of my kids to give me a call or whatever. And I was happy to talk to him. This guy's name's Jack. Jack is starting out in a new career. One of the things that we talked about was, he said, hey, I was going to start, reaching out to certain people, but I was afraid that I might not be polished enough yet in my approach. I'm like, Jack, you just start reaching out to people, man. Nobody's going to remember like a bad call they had with you a week from now, even probably a day later, you might, but you just need to get in the game and start going out on practice calls, start practicing fine tuning your conversations because for most people, what ends up happening, they never have enough activity. They never have enough conversations. So the very few number of conversations they do, they're trying so hard not to screw them up that they inadvertently screw them up because they're trying too hard. In fact, the analogy I gave the other day, so I don't know if you had anybody from your team on our Elevate session, but I said the main thing you have to do in your pregame prep before going into a sales call is just get your expectations low and not try so hard. Most salespeople come across like an eager puppy, like slobbering all over their prospective customers, dropping a wet ball on their lap, asking them to throw it back to them. And what I said is what you need to do is you got to be like the old cool dog that's lying in the sun that he'd play catch with you if you wanted to throw it to him and if he didn't mind getting out of the sun, but it's going to take a little encouragement from him. Don't be that slobbering puppy. And 90% of all salespeople come across like slobbering puppies, and they scare away their customers.
I love that metaphor. So that was actually one of the things I loved about when I first met Chris, because I met Chris after years of doing seminars and leading workshops and working with thousands of different medical professionals. And, like I never thought, as I said, thought of myself as a salesperson. I was just really good at consulting. And I think that's really worked for my personality because I was like always, I like being the expert and I never was the slobbering puppy. That's just something I can't bring myself to do, Chris. Chris, don't make me be a slobbering puppy. I hate that idea with my very soul.
Yeah, good.
So I think that's actually part of the reason why everybody in healthcare hates sales because they associate sales with the slobbering puppy. And I used to back when I worked with individual doctors back years ago, it's like I became a doctor so I don't have to be a salesperson, which I understand, right? So nobody wants to be a slobbering puppy. Nobody wants to be, that should be the cover of your next book, just a slobbering puppy.
No
No.
kidding. Well, when you were talking about healthcare sales, when you talk to if you're in a professional setting, let's say plastic surgery office, et cetera, where there's a sales component to the physician and the office staff, and everybody's trying so hard not to be the slobbering puppy that they turn into some sort of convoluted version of who they really are. When really, what I would say, my general rule of thumb is just tell people the truth. And if the truth is they have issues that you are good at addressing and it costs some money, then just tell them what those issues are that you're good at addressing and don't get too in your head about it. I think, unfortunately, being a good conversationalist is really about being authentic and being in the moment. And so many people, who are, let's say you're a physician or your front office staff, and you might be great. You might know your business inside and out. You might know your field inside and out. But when you want something from the person you're talking to, and that creeps into your head, it squirrels the conversation that you're having. And all of a sudden you become less of your authentic self and you become that convoluted version of yourself. And that's unfortunate.
So that
So,
word authentic, I just have to jump in on that.
yeah,
Like back when you and I first met each other, that wasn't like a catchword, but today it is. Authenticity in marketing, authenticity everywhere. Most people don't think about sales being authentic, right? They talk about it in the marketing stuff all the time. Be authentic. Be is an authentic, treat your patient or your consumer in,
yeah.
as an authentic manner. Somebody forgot to tell the sales team. I don't know why, but they seem to have forgotten. And I think that that's a big part of, I'll just throw this out there, a big part of why I like the methods that, we've worked on together and I learned from you years ago was the idea that, as I'm a professional, I'm equal in this. I think that's a big part of the slobbering puppy thing. Well, if you act like
Yep.
a slobbering puppy, they're going to treat you like a slobbering puppy. Like,
Yep.
is it possible, Chris, to be an equal and not be, a pushy, stereotypical salesperson and not being a slobbering puppy? Like, how do you do that?
Well, so there's two ways you get there. Maybe there's three. Number one, going back to your original question around this, is you get into your activity. So if you're asking for referrals or you're doing webinars or whatever, you're making calls, whatever your activity is, you really get in and you consistently do the activities that you've committed to doing. And if you're doing that, you're going to get enough opportunities that you don't have to convert every call. Because unfortunately, what happens is when people have too little in their pipeline, the need to convert every single interaction goes way, way up. And you want to have an abundance of opportunities. So if some happen and some don't, it's just not a big deal. So that would be number one. And I would say, number two is you have to be a student of the game, right? You have to be thoughtful about the interactions that you're having. You have to be self-reflective and maybe, through recording your calls or by, in a scrimmage or a walkthrough or a role play to just work on building a consciousness of the kinds of conversations that you want to have. And I'll say the third thing is, you got to be open to getting some coaching. You got to be teachable. And as part of being a student of the game, you got to get feedback from, in my opinion, there has to be somebody in your professional life or your personal life that you respect that will tell you the truth about how you interact with people. Because if there's things that we're doing that are annoying to our customers, I always say, when do you want to find that out? Right. And hopefully you want to find that out as soon as possible. And you've got somebody around you that you respect that has a good eye and a good ear for what should be happening on a sales call and give you that feedback.
That's awesome. So, it's funny too, the one of the things that, I've talked about over the years is the whole idea of, and I got this actually from Tony Robbins before I met you, like years and years ago, and whether it was audiobook or speaking or wherever I got it from. But he talked a lot about people do a lot more to avoid pain than to get pleasure. And I said that again, they do a lot more to avoid pain than get pleasure. Pleasure is theoretical. I'm going to give you $100 and tomorrow you probably will get 500. Okay, but I just lost, I just had a call yesterday, Chris, that I estimate the opportunity cost this client, somebody I've known for years, has never pulled the trigger, called us, and I'm estimating they have a $20 million problem based upon what they just told me on that phone call.
Yeah.
So that's when they called me. They've thought highly of us forever. They think we're great. It was never pain. Now they have a $20 million problem. It's pain. So talk about that, the motivation and how important is that to the sales process?
Yeah, it's critical. So the acronym that we look at is HEARD, right? How many hours have you lost pursuing something that didn't happen? What emotions did you experience because you did not, because of the problem that you're experiencing? What adversity have you faced now because of this problem, and what headwinds are you running into? What relationships have been harmed as a result of living in that problem? And the final piece of that is, what dollars have you lost, and what does it cost you financially to continue to live in that problem? And until you weigh out the herd ratio, and when you take stock of that, because people naturally don't want to concentrate on their problems. Otherwise, that's called depression, if all you do is think about your problems, right? And so sometimes as a healthy, helpful salesperson, you are a mirror to your customers about the realities of their situation. And you are not afraid to look at the realities of the situation. You're not afraid to ask them how many dollars it's costing them. I talked to somebody yesterday, and in coaching the call, I said, well, what kind of money are they making at that company? He goes, oh, I've never asked them. Like, why wouldn't you ask them that? I mean, it's completely germane to the issue. Why, what are we doing if we're not helping our customers make more money? But so many people walk around with this fear in their head, like, oh, I can't really ask them that, or that's not appropriate. So they dance around the real issue. And again, I'm saying, grow in your confidence that you have the ability to ask any question of any person if you ask it the right way. And if you're not asking it because you're afraid, then maybe you got to get some advice on how to ask that question in a way that would land well. So,
another thing that I think, going back to the open communication part, is I think I got this line from you, but I've always loved it. It's like, wait, I'm allowed to do that? It's like, if you feel it, say it.
Yeah.
That's right. If you feel it, say it. So
if you feel it,
give me an example how that might look, right?
So the rule is, if you feel it, say it. Say it from how it impacts the customer, not how it impacts you, and say it nicely. All right. So if you feel it, say it. Say it from how it impacts them, not you, and say it nicely. All right.
So let's pretend I feel like I can tell this meeting's going nowhere, and they're beginning to look at their phone, or like, this is not looking good. What
I might say in that case is, I might say, hey, listen, I know you have tons of options of what you can do to grow your business. Working with us in a marketing consulting capacity to make sure the spend's going the right way. I'm not sure that that's a high enough priority for you, or having a big enough impact for you to make a change from what you're already doing. Or am I misreading this somehow? right?
Yeah.
So I've said that with a very neutral tonality, but I'm really getting that. I'm putting the mirror right up to his face and say, like, is this important to you or not? But I said it nicely, and I said it from how it impacts them, because maybe they do have competing priorities, which most everybody does. Everybody's got competing priorities. The sales challenge is to figure out, can we put a spotlight on the issue that we're talking about, and is it important enough for them to take some action with us or not?
So it's really funny you say that. I reached out from a private equity. I saw something in the trades that we follow, and I noticed somebody was out there, and it's like, I've never met this guy. And I don't usually do, I'm CEO, I'm pretty busy. I don't go reaching out to people. But this particular case study I read about was such an interesting guy that it's like, I sent him a LinkedIn invite saying, hey, I saw a note about you in the trades. I'm guessing marketing's not super important to you right now. You've got a lot to figure out over there. But when you do, we should talk. And I got the nicest, warmest reply, accepted my thing. And I think it's important to remember that, it's like, first of all, I'm not selling. I'm running my own company. I've got other stuff to do. But secondly, I was just a human. They just merged a bunch of businesses. He's got other stuff to worry about. And I think that reality shocks people when you don't go straight to assuming, like, can you buy like the slobbering puppy?
Well, I also think, in our society today, unfortunately, what's happened is that because people have become so device centric and relied on electronic communication versus live communication, that they've developed a whole host of head trash that filters people's desire to even reach out to somebody, and they're like afraid to bother another human being versus taking an active interest. So if I pick up the phone and I call you, Stuart, it's because I'm interested in your life. I am curious about what's happening to you personally and to you professionally. And that is the reason why I pick up the phone, right? I don't pick up the phone personally, or nor do I recommend, because I need to get another purchase order from somebody. But I take an active interest in everybody. And I'll say this from a coaching perspective. I always say, if you're talking to customers or prospects any differently than you talk to your better friends or your family members or your peers, and your tonality or your mannerisms are different, then something's wrong, right? And maybe you're leaning towards the slobbering puppy because you want something, you want them to pick up the ball and throw it to you or whatever. But everybody can tell in your tonality. Do you want something from me or not? And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, you know, it's like I don't play poker, but every now and then I'll stumble across a bunch of guys playing poker, and they got hats and big glasses because they don't want their opponents to see what's going on for them. And look, your customers they're making judgments about how you're approaching them all the time. And your approach is either making them feel more comfortable and open and invited to talk to you, or it's causing them to close down and be suspicious and be less open to your suggestions or your approach. So
There's so much we're talking about today. I think is so valuable. Like right there, like yeah, it's like they're going to be repelled or attracted based on how you're being,
yeah,
and so like. I mean, the slobbering puppy's pretty adorable, but I don't buy anything from slobbering puppy. Not
yeah, they're
typical.
cute. They're cute for a little bit, but sooner or later, like, hey, I have to wear these pants today, So,
And as soon as they become annoying, you don't want to ever see the slobbering puppy again. And that's where we get
right.
an unlimited pass to their voicemail. So let's
Yes.
talk about healthcare a little. We've covered a lot of basics today. That was
Yeah.
fun. Chris and I've been knowing each other for a long time. We come into this thing with no agenda, but I'm pretty sure we have a lot of valuable stuff for
Oh,
our
yeah.
listeners today. Let's talk about healthcare. To switch gears, because we could talk all day about sales theory and how to communicate and be authentic and all those things. But like what have you noticed in healthcare? I don't know if you have any examples or any like truisms. Like talk about healthcare, because I know again
Sure.
healthcare is so broad. It's like B2B,
Yeah.
B2C, whatever. What have you learned?
Yeah. So I'll do a little B2C for some trends in B2C, and then I'll give you some trends that I see in B2B. In the B2C environments, most of the people who enter in a healthcare practitioner or service role of whatever kind, they're attracted to the industry because of they like caring for people. They're interested in patient care. They're interested in improving somebody's health. They're not interested in selling stuff in their mind. So the biggest hurdle that the whole B2C community has to overcome is reconciling that telling people the truth about their healthcare needs is not selling, it's helping your customers. And then the other issue is if you're leading an organization like that. So there's a team we started talking to just recently, and they have some great devices. They got great opportunities for their patients, but maybe 10% of the staff is bought into we should bring these up with our patients. So our theme around special teams players, which are non-sales people that have to communicate with customers and offer ideas, suggestions, opportunities, whether that's booking an appointment or offering an upgrade or an add-on or whatever it might be, or booking them for a service. Though figuring out how to get this, make it easy for your special teams players to do. So what you want is a very limited task list of requests that your special teams group can communicate with great authenticity to the patients that you guys serve. And if you can jump that hurdle and get, instead of 10% of your staff, if you could get, let's say, 70 or 80% of your staff bought into this is a good thing for us to bring up with our patients, you're going to have great results. But you have to limit what you're doing. For your listeners who are interested, pick up the client retention matrix. We have a lot of tools and ideas and suggestions on how to integrate that into an organization. That's what I see in B2C, like some overarching trends.
Let me add a couple of quick thoughts to that from our experience. So the one of the things that we see is constantly is the phones. And so that is like the number one issue that will limit a marketing campaign success. I can drive thousands of inquiries to a business. If they can't answer their damn phone, nothing's going to happen on the back end. So looking at that, depending on the kind of business it is, like one of the big challenges, and Chris, you nailed it, like almost everybody in healthcare is like thinks sales and anathema. They like, they hate even the word, let alone doing it. But someone's got to figure out, okay, what is the process for handling an inbound inquiry? And this is something we talk about a lot, and I won't go into the detail today, but that's an absolutely vital thing is, okay, for example, how do we get, and I've got webinars and different things on this for people that are interested in this as well, but how do I get, who do I send those inbound inquiries to? Is it a call center? Is it somebody, do I have new inquiries versus an administrative call? How do I hire for that? How do I train for that? All of those things. But if the person on the phone views himself as an appointment setter, then this isn't going to go well. They view themselves as a collection person, it's going to go worse. So it's like finding a way to make sure you're getting those inbound inquiries handled. And you don't have to use the word sold if you don't want to, but they're really selling an appointment, especially when you get into things like bariatric surgery or infertility, where there's a cash component. It's a whole different game. And you just have to recognize that's a vital thing. And you must deal with that in training too, I'm sure.
I think, if you can get your team bought into, look, we're spending money to help a community that needs our help. And so if you get somebody to finally call in about bariatric surgery and we want to treat them really well, and that call is super important to us. And when they're ready at that moment to finally take some action on their situation, we want to do everything that we can to help them take that action to help themselves.
Yeah.
And if that's kind of the mindset of the team, because I think you have to come at it from the psychology of like why it would matter to your team. And then two, how they go about the mechanics of that really matter. And so and I talked earlier in our discussion today about having a playbook. So your playbook has to feel authentic. It has to highlight the the desire to serve the audience that you're serving versus convert people and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
It's funny too, because we did a couple of videos for Invisalign years ago. One was handling from the patient inquiry, how do you get them
uh-huh,
in the office, then how do you greet them, then how do you present treatment for Invisalign, and how do you close it all in a seamless, like non-scary way. And then the second one we did was for the hygienist in a general practice, how do they talk about Invisalign in a way that doesn't feel scary? And those are just two examples of those are systems that had to be thought through. And how do we do this and communicate in a way? I also want to say something that you brought up that I giggle about a lot. Giggle, maybe not the right word, but I think about like in the world of the practices, and this is something they've been doing in hospitals for years, and they're doing it in practices more, especially multi-location, specialty businesses. They have somebody who's not B2C. They have like, well, on the B2C side, they have treatment coordinators, and the good ones, they have no problem selling cases. But
right.
they also sometimes have physician liaisons whose jobs are to go out and build doctor referrals, kind of like a drug
Yeah.
rep does. But in both cases, I notice those people often feel like they're a fish out of water culturally with the rest of the office. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's like
Oh,
they're in sales and everybody looks down their nose at them.
yeah. And to me, like sales is a team sport. So if they're not all approaching it as a team and working in concert with each other, because I was telling those groups, like just dropping off coffee mugs and cookies in and of itself is not enough to make a difference, to make an impact. But
Right.
being able to have an authentic conversation with those referring doctors' offices in a meaningful conversation, and if you feel it, say it nicely, and say it from how it's going to impact them, not how it's going to impact you, so that you are getting to the real issue. Because unfortunately, there's thousands of those reps across the country dropping off cookies, and that team, not only are they not making an impact, they don't feel like they're making an impact. The company's wondering, should we be paying them any money or not? And then the rest of the team doesn't respect what they're doing. So you're just not getting the impact that you could if we were really working as a team. So
So that engagement is everything. And so let's talk about the B2B side, which we're kind
yeah,
of jumping a little bit here. And B2B in healthcare could be reaching out to referring physicians. It could be to hospital administrators. It could be to practice CEOs. It could be to lots of different people, right? It could be,
yeah,
an OEM manufacturer selling upstream or downstream or whatever. So like, what are some of the things you've learned about working in healthcare, including people I've referred you to?
yeah.
Lest we forget. So like, what have you learned there?
Well, here's the thing. Look, it's a big industry, right? So, and there's a lot of people doing it. So, what I've noticed is a common trend where sales teams basically get devalued is that it's my proposal versus in the sea of other proposals. And if that's really all it is, and you don't like, so people talk a lot about building relationships, but I don't know if they know what that means. And if I'm really in a relationship with you and you tell me as a, let's say you work in a big pharma company and you're a product manager and you're struggling with your numbers are off and you're about to go off formulary or whatever, the those are real issues that matter to you as a person. And if you have some tools to help them, I have to take an active interest, even if it means telling you like the way you're spending money isn't right. And even if it means telling you like, hey, some of the decisions you made in the past, probably you're probably burning some money, and getting real with people. Because when you're calling in an industry that spends a lot of money, so listen, healthcare, there's a lot of money spent. So there's money to be had. So you get a lot of different companies going after this money. What ends up happening is if you become a number, or you're just going through the motions, you're never going to stand out because there's way too many people calling on that same person. So you have to really be good at making a unique connection with every customer. And when I talked before about being authentic, if you make a unique connection and then you just stick to your process, right? I was coaching a team earlier last year. I was at It's meeting in Jersey, right? Imagine that for related to big pharma. And this goes back. It's part of the referral trail that you and I started with Stephen Wolf years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's a lasting one that's, it's taken all. I've just followed the course, and I've been coaching this team. But what I found out in the meeting was none of them were diligent about setting up next steps. They were all.
Let me ask you, what was the average salary of these people you're talking about?
Somewhere between probably $150 to $450, right?
$400,000 are not setting next step call.
You're making $300,000. You're not setting a next step, and it's because like they're tiptoeing around. And if the buyer says, "Well, call me," I'm just collecting numbers right now. Call me in a month. Like, dude, you gotta stick to your system. Get into your playbook. Follow the system. Follow your playbook. Become a student of the game, and it'll pay back some dividends for you.
Dude, if I was a salesperson and that was my job and I was making that level of money and I admitted publicly that I wasn't, I would be just embarrassed to show back up to work the next day. That's tough.
But Stuart, like you and I, we're serious about this. We've always had a seriousness. We've always been students of the game.
Yeah.
So
sure.
What percentage of people in sales roles are truly self-reflective students of the game, and it matters to them to execute as they know they should execute? It's a small percentage. And then the other thing is, the head trash sneaks in. Well, they've always been responsive and I'm sure they'll get back to me. We hit it off, and, they don't set a next step. And it seems like I've been coaching this for years, right? 3 decades, 3 solid decades of coaching this. And I've been coaching that team for a year. And I'm like, I was shocked. And I told the leader, I'm like, dude, I can't believe that these guys are not consistently setting up next steps. Why? What's going on? And some of it is, because you're paying somebody $300,000, you think they got it together, and they don't always have it together.
So the one thing you mentioned there too is student of the game, and I think that is the number one thing. And again, I have pretty broad scope. I'm not doing sales. My job as CEO. But I look at the student of the game, whatever you do, is like the key factor. When I'm interviewing people, like when I talk to, for example, paid search people or paid social or SEO, first question, or one of the first questions is, what are you reading? What blogs are you watching? How are you keeping up your skills? Like, what do you do for continuing ad? And it's like, every position we have, like, design, writing, art. But what the funny thing is, marketing, most people don't open a book after college. I mean, they really don't. Like, they're just not naturally curious. And so, like, I don't know why you mentioned earlier, it's like, a lot of people think lowly of sales. I respect sales as like, a discipline, just like anything else we do. And I feel like, well, if you're serious about this, how could you not be committed to this? And I feel like it's probably because like one of the challenges with both sales and marketing is anybody can do it. I mean, anybody can call themselves, anybody can call themselves a marketer. Anybody can call themselves a salesperson. I don't mean everybody can do it, but everybody can call themselves that. I really wish there was licensure for marketing, by the way, Chris, in my world, because it would like take away 90% of my competition, right? Like
yeah, for sure.
Like there's just a lot of people out there that just sort of go through the motions. But when you're really good and you have a really good sales system, it's like it just changes everything. And I think also one of the challenges that I have and some of the people on my team have is, after a while, you have it so good, you're unconsciously competent. Even then, you have to remind yourself of the basics. Like, oh God, rookie mistake. Okay, I didn't set that appointment. I feel like a schmuck. But it's like, you don't do it the next time, right? You don't make it a habit. You just have to come back to being able to do it. So that's really funny. I just think it's probably heartening for some of our listeners. Like, okay, it's not just me. These things are, everywhere. So, Chris, as we wrap up here, I would love I don't know, a handful of, like if these levers, if you can pull these levers, you're going to be far better off than you were when before you listen to this podcast. So I don't know if that means in recruiting and managing and compensating, but like as a sales leader, what are some of the biggest levers you can pull that'll eventually bring you results?
Yeah, well, just assume that all the people who work for you are human beings. As human beings, they're fallible. They make mistakes. They need to grow. The question you need to be asking yourself is, what resources do I provide for the team that reports to me to help them continue on their growth journey? And do they value coaching and feedback? And do you have a coach that's around to give them feedback? And it can't always be you as the boss, because your people want to please you, right? So your people naturally, because they want to please you and they want to look good in front of you, they're going to tell you what they want you to hear. But so you probably need an independent coach at some level periodically to give them real feedback. And I like, me personally, you're just talking about that question. I don't know how many books I have open and Audible right now, but I probably have a half a dozen of them going right now, coming from different areas of business, spiritual, personal development. Um, I'm always investing in myself. And as a leader of a team, though, if you can build a development program where people know they come in and they're going to win a championship because they're playing on your team, it starts to draw an even better class of people to you. And then the people start on the team start coaching each other. That has to be a cultural decision that you made. Like, we are going to be about self-improvement and continuously getting better. But for the sales leaders, if you pick up our 10, you pick up Conversations Made Easy and creating a playbook for growing your connections with customers. Like, we have 10 systems to follow. If you follow those 10 systems, you're going to build a phenomenal team. Things like increasing go live, things like making those special teams players operate more efficiently and working as a team, field rides and recording phone calls and recording Zoom calls to get feedback on how you're doing. All of those levers, if you pull all those levers, you're gonna build quite an organization.
Yeah, and I'll just give a quick plug for Chris as a friend and colleague. Going back to what he said, I think the biggest thing about Chris's organization when I met Chris was more of a sales trainer, which was valuable. But it's like, I don't need training. I need, like, a system, and I think that's what's really exciting. Because I think you're right. I don't think, even if you're a sales VP, it's sometimes at some point, I don't know, it becomes the same old story, and they just sort of don't believe their sales manager anymore or their CEO. And having a coach that comes in from the outside can cut through the crap really quickly and
Yeah.
come back and say, of your 5 people, I'm concerned about these two. This person over here you need to enable, and this person over here, just get out of their way. Like, that's really valuable feedback, and it's really easy in an organization to get caught up in. You look like you want to say something on that.
Yeah, well, and as a sales leader, even if you're a great sales coach, you're going to get overwhelmed and run out of bandwidth to do all the things with your team that you want to do. So what I've seen over the years is the most successful sales leaders leverage whatever energy we bring to the table to help them with their team, so that you can continue to work on the highest priorities that are in front of you broadly through your organization. And I think, just like any leader gets bogged down in the day-to-day details, yeah, it's going to be hard for you to get the bigger picture items taken care of. So getting
Yeah.
help is always going to help.
Yeah, that's great. So, Chris, it's been fun knowing you all these years and working with Anthony Mayo as our liaison for the day-to-day stuff that we work with our team. I think, if you're, certainly can pick up Chris's books. I'm not getting any commission from Chris, though I should.
Jeff Bezos gets the significant commission. The rest of us are just standing in line behind him.
I'm joking. This is just from the heart. I think that, for Chris's, if you're really trying to figure out where to get your footing on the sales stuff in a broader area, I feel comfortable referring Chris. He and his team have done a great job, and I know them well. And I think philosophically, the biggest thing is just philosophically going back to slobbering puppies. Never in my life did I want to be a salesperson. My father, by the way, owned an auto dealership. He was the ultimate salesman, and I'm like, sales? No, 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 no. But I recognize now that it's not so much sales. It's just, good human communication skills, and, interacting with individuals authentically, honestly, without being the slobbering puppy, without begging, which, oh my God. And any of the doctors I've worked with over the years, like, I don't want to beg anybody. It's like, you shouldn't. Who said you should? What, like, that's somebody else's playbook. That's from the 30s or something. That's not from today. So anyway, Chris, it's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Thank you, Stuart. I so appreciate our friendship, our professional relationship that we've had over the years. And it's been a blast for me personally to just kind of do a little bit of a walk down memory lane today, and as well as pass on some messages that you and I have honed over the years. And hopefully your listening audience is taking some notes and putting some of this to good work, and they're passing it on to others around them, and cementing the learning for themselves. So it's been a true joy. Thank you.
Awesome.